I'm Brandon from My Seminary Life, and this is more reading list recommendations. That's right, folks. We're back again to talk even more about even more books. But before we get started on today's list of 5 more books that you should go check out, as always, subscribe and enable notifications. Do always on so you never miss a new video. Hit that like button and drop in the comments and let me know, in general, what are some of your favorite books? Because that's what we're here to talk about today. In the last video, I highlighted 5 books that have made a profound impact in my spiritual journey. A few months ago, we did a video where I talked about a book from each one of the classes I took in seminary that I think you should go check out. Today, this is just the other list. These are books that I love, have made a profound impact on me, but aren't necessarily like Christian ministry theology based, okay? These are just other titles that I think are definitely worth checking out if you've never read them before. And yes, this is partially an excuse for me to just talk about comic books, which is where we're going to start, as I want to highlight 2 of my favorite books by my favorite comic book writer, Alan Moore, Watchmen and V for Vendetta. I'm going to do these kind of at the same time because they do overlap topic-wise a little bit. Watchmen, starting first with that, is my all-time favorite comic book story, hands down. This is it. I love Watchmen. And V for Vendetta, if I were to sit down and write out like my top 10 favorite comic book stories, V for Vendetta would probably be somewhere in the top 5, possibly top 3. I love these books a lot. For those of you who are unfamiliar and maybe are like, why would I bother reading comic books, Brandon? These 2 books are adult material. And what I mean by that is that not that it's like raunchy or anything like that, but it has, the storylines are for grown-ups. These comic books make you think. Watchmen is about exploring different ways that authority is corrupted and abused, using various forms of superheroes, the anti-hero, God, characters like that to illustrate how authority can be abused and used in different ways. There's a lot of ethical dilemmas that are brought up in Watchmen. There's different philosophical views, deistic deism, that's the word I'm looking for, deism, nihilistic existentialism. It's a lot. It's a very thick, meaty read with a lot of, it's an ogre, it's an onion. There's a lot of layers to this book. The art is good. The art is really good. Dave Gibbons on the art. It's very, very good. This is Alan Moore's masterpiece. It's a wonderful read. And similarly with V for Vendetta, this explores anarchy. This explores the topic of anarchy, and I have to figure out how to talk about this without YouTube taking this video down for some reason. But if you've ever seen the movie, you kind of get the general idea of the story of the movies for both Watchmen and V for Vendetta are pretty good adaptations, especially Zack Snyder's Watchmen is almost panel for panel when it comes to his version of the story. But V for Vendetta also is very, with, what's his name? Hugo Weaving and Natalie Portman are also very close. That's a very close adaptation to the book as well. Explores a world where England has become this fascist state, and V is setting a movement to bring anarchy to the United Kingdom to liberate them again from abusive authority. But not even just like abusive authority. With Alan Moore being an anarchist himself, any form of lording authority over another person is seen as bad. And whereas Watchmen is this very interesting, like philosophical, ethical reflection and study, as a Christian, reading and watching V for Vendetta, the movie, like I said, both the book and the movie are like some of my favorite pieces of art and literature. Reading or V for Vendetta does make you really have to think about like where could anarchy actually work? How could anarchy actually work? And just kind of looking at it as neutrally as possible and seeing these moments and trying to do like the mental gymnastics of like, is this actually like a good way to live? And that's as far as I want to go with that. Every time I read or watch the the story, I do these exercises in my brain of like, could it be biblical to live this way? And it's hard to answer yes, but I do think there are elements within this worldview that actually make sense. Maybe I could put it that way. So Watchmen, V for Vendetta are my first two. Excuse me. Up next, moving now into the martial art world, the Tao Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee. So I'm a lifelong martial artist, lifelong comic book nerd, and a lifelong Christian. These are just kind of all things that go together for me. And when it comes to the martial art world, there are certain books that it is expected that everyone will read at some point. You know, we have our books similar to like in Christianity. You know, we have like Pilgrim's Progress, Mere Christianity, The Cost of Discipleship. There are books within the martial art world like that as well, and the Tao Jeet Kune Do is one of them. This book is a series of collected thoughts and statements of Bruce Lee, who collected them from other sources. Some of his own original ideas as well. A lot of the philosophy and framework for his style, Jeet Kune Do. And it's very interesting. I think I've talked about before on Whole Church, which you can also check out here on the Anazao Ministries podcast network, that Taoism, there is something. Here I am talking about how anarchy, like there's some parts of it that I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense. Similarly, I'm going to say here now and say, you know, Taoism in certain spots does kind of make sense. Especially when it comes to like meditation, you know, their understanding of meditation and knowing yourself and your identity. Like, I think there is something worth reflecting on when it comes to Taoist philosophy. And if you love Bruce Lee, because there are people out there who just love him, maybe never done martial arts, but they've, you know, have done, seen his movies or something like that, or just find him to be a cultural icon in general. Like, you got to read this. This is, you know, he has written several books. Most of them training manuals. Most of them are training manuals, but this is like to kind of get at like his mind and his understanding of how he perceived the world. You got to read the Tao Jeet Kune Do. And another one that shows up on that martial artist reading list must-dos is, of course, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. This is a book that often gets tossed around for like leadership. You gotta lead. You know, this is another one of those leadership books. The thing that stood out to me about the Art of War when I read it was that although this book is always like, this is a book about leadership, a lot of like how good leadership is portrayed by Sun Tzu, who may or may not have written this, is like just making sure everybody's doing their part, delegating, and like, making sure that your troops are doing well and like are happy, and that the people that you have put over them are carrying out their orders, so that way they carry out, you know, the soldiers carry out their orders. Like, again, not wanting to beat to death my thoughts on leadership material that's out there, but like, there's not really anything new here, but the emphasis is really on, to be a good leader, you have to think of others. You have to do what's best for others, and you have to delegate. It's very others focused, where I feel like sometimes it's portrayed as like you're going to make yourself this great leader by power posing and, you know, thinking critically, and like, you know, strategy stuff does come up in the book, but like, a lot of it is how do I make sure the people who are following me can follow me well. And so I would offer that as if you're really into leadership material and you haven't read it yet, or again, if you're kind of interested in the martial art world, it is a must read of this genre as well. The last book I want to talk about for this video is The Hunting of the Snark by Lewis Carroll. Yes, that Lewis Carroll, the same one who wrote Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, those books. This is about an expedition crew who's going to look for the Snark. And it's a poem. First off, it's a poem, like this long narrative poem thing. I don't know what the technical term is. I should probably know that, though. And it's a very interesting read as it explores. Here I am in a video talking about, anarchy has some parts that maybe kind of make sense, and Taoism has some parts that maybe kind of make some sense, and absurdism kind of has some parts that kind of maybe make some sense. It's a good thing I did all the other videos about ministry and theology already. Because this book explores absurdism, which I like the topic of absurdism. I think it kind of circles into my existential philosophical worldview, along with H.P. Lovecraft's cosmic indifference. I think all kind of overlap in different ways. And with absurdism, you have this idea that like the universe just doesn't make sense. Like things happen and it's kind of wacky and goofy, and that there's really no point, but from like there's no point, not from like a nihilistic point of view of like what's the point of living, but there's no point as in like it's strange, like life in the world and the universe is strange, and things just kind of happen and we have no control over it. And the long running like thought about the study that's been done on The Hunting of the Snark is whether or not there's actually a point to the story in general, or if this was actually like an April Fool's prank, because this book came out on April 1st. And so it's always been kind of this like debate of like, did Lewis Carroll like intentionally try to put something out there that made sense about absurdism, or is this just completely absurd as a joke? So it's a very short read. Again, it's a poem. It's a very short read. And I know certain Lewis Carroll fans who read it every year. It's just like part of their digest if you're really into Lewis Carroll. So those are my other reading recommendations. If you're just looking for something to pick up right now, there's a couple martial art books, a couple comic books, and a poem about absurdity. So check those out sometime. They are some of my favorites, but let me know again in the comments, what are some of your favorites? What are some of your favorite books, just in general, books that you have enjoyed reading, stories that make you feel cozy, stories that make you think? You let me know. And if you also want to talk about certain things that, kind of make sense, even though they might not be Christian, you could put that in the comments too. Just know people might come for you. Like, I'm anticipating people are going to maybe come for me in this video. Oh, well. Again, the show is on the podcast, which usually comes out on Saturday mornings, wherever you get your podcasts. They're on all the major platforms. Comes out normally on Saturday mornings, but is on hiatus for the remainder of February. We will be back. Check the notes. March 2nd for the start of our series, Celebrate March, where all throughout the month I'm going to be highlighting people who were born in the month of March who have made an impact on religion, faith, and pop culture. It's a really fun, wide-ranging conversation that we're going to be having. But that's it for today's episode. Once again, this is Brandon signing off, reminding you as always that theology is for everyone, so keep on studying.